The champagne fluid felt like ice in my palm, but I kept my grip steady. I wasn't about to let Marcus see my hands shake, not after what he just whispered to me in the car. Try not to embarrass me. These people are way above your level. Those words cut deeper than any knife could, especially coming from the man who'd promised me the world 6 years ago when we stood at that altar in the Hamptons. But I didn't flinch. I just stepped out of the Tesla, smoothed down my Valentino dress, and walked beside him like I belonged there, because honestly, I did. More than he knew. Way more than he could ever imagine. The Ashford estate sprawled before us like something out of a movie, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers visible even from the circular driveway. Old money. The kind that didn't just talk, it whispered, and everyone listened. Marcus had been angling for an invitation to this party for months, ever since he found out that Richard Ashford himself would be hosting a private gathering for Manhattan's elite. Investment bankers, tech moguls, politicians who made laws over scotch and cigars. This was Marcus's big shot, his chance to move from being just another hedge fund manager to being somebody who mattered in circles where net worth started with a B. I watched him adjust his Tom Ford jacket for the third time as we approached the massive double doors. His jaw was tight, that vein in his temple pulsing the way it always did when he was nervous but pretending not to be. Good. Let him sweat. Let him wonder if his trophy wife would say the wrong thing to the wrong person and blow his chances at whatever deal he was chasing. He'd spent the entire 40-minute drive from our penthouse lecturing me about who to talk to, who to avoid, what topics were acceptable, and which ones would make me look like the nobody he apparently thought I was. The doors swung open before Marcus could even ring the bell. A butler, actual, honest-to-God butler in a tuxedo, greeted us with a practiced smile. But his eyes slid past Marcus and landed directly on me, and something flickered there. Recognition? No, that couldn't be right. I'd never been here before, never even met the Ashfords, despite Marcus name-dropping them at every opportunity. Yet the butler's smile widened, became genuine, almost warm. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said, and I swear Marcus nearly choked on his own spit. "Mr. Ashford has been expecting you. Please, come in." Marcus grabbed my elbow, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise, but I kept walking. The foyer was something else. All that old money elegance that you couldn't buy no matter how fat your bank account got. Real art on the walls, not the pretentious garbage Marcus collected to impress clients. A grand staircase curved upward, and I could hear voices and laughter floating down from somewhere above. Jazz played softly, something vintage and smooth that probably cost more to license for the night than most people made in a month.
"Celine," Marcus hissed in my ear, his cologne suffocating me. "What the hell is going on? How does he know your name?" I didn't answer, mainly because I had no clue myself. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but I kept my face neutral, serene even. Years of living with Marcus had taught me how to hide every emotion, every thought, every moment of pain behind a mask of perfect composure. If you wanted to play games, if you wanted to drag me here and belittle me, then fine. I could play too. I'd gotten damn good at it. The butler led us through the foyer and into a massive reception room where maybe 50 people mingled, all of them dripping in designer everything. Diamonds caught the light from a chandelier that probably cost more than my childhood home. I recognized faces from Forbes covers, from CNN, from those society pages that Marcus obsessed over, and they were all looking at me. Not at Marcus, who'd spent 2 hours getting ready and another hour in the car psyching himself up for this moment. At me. That's when Richard Ashford himself broke away from a conversation with someone who I was pretty sure was a senator and headed straight toward us. The man was in his early 60s, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that screamed Savile Row custom. He had that bearing that old money gave you, that unshakable confidence that came from never having to prove yourself to anyone. Marcus straightened up beside me, plastering on his biggest fake smile, the one he used when he was about to pitch an investment. But Ashford walked right past him. walked past Marcus like he was furniture, like he wasn't even there, and stopped directly in front of me. He took my hand in both of his, and his eyes, Jesus, his eyes were warm and filled with something I couldn't quite name. Gratitude? Relief? Something deeper? Celine, he said, and his voice cracked just slightly. We've all been waiting to meet you. Finally! I felt Marcus go rigid beside me, saw his face drain of color so fast it would have been funny if I wasn't equally confused. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what the hell was happening, but I kept my cool, kept that smile fixed on my face even as my pulse thundered in my ears. Mr. Ashford? I managed, my voice steady, even though nothing else was. It's an honor to be here. The honor is entirely ours, Ashford said, and he still hadn't let go of my hand. Please, call me Richard, and you must come meet my wife. She's been beside herself all week knowing you'd finally be here. He guided me deeper into the room, and I could feel every eye on us. Marcus stumbled along behind, trying to keep up, his confusion morphing into something uglier. Anger? Suspicion? That paranoid edge he got when he thought someone was pulling something over on him. But I had nothing to hide. At least, I didn't think I did. My past was pretty straightforward, or so I'd always believed. Small-town girl, worked my way through community college, met Marcus at a charity gala where I was serving drinks, fell for his charm and his promises before I realized both were as fake as his tan. Victoria Ashford was holding court near the windows that overlooked manicured gardens lit up like something out of a fairy tale. She was stunning. Early 60s, but could have passed for 50, wearing a gown that probably cost more than my car. When she saw me, her face transformed. She set down her champagne and rushed over, and before I could react, she pulled me into a hug. A real one, not one of those air kiss society things. She held me tight, and I felt her shaking. "Thank you," she whispered against my ear, so quiet I almost missed it. "Thank you for saving her. Thank you for saving our daughter." My blood turned to ice. Our daughter? I pulled back, searching her face, and that's when the memory hit me. Not a full memory, more like fragments, pieces of something I'd shoved down so deep I'd almost convinced myself it never happened. 3 years ago, the subway platform, the girl who'd been standing too close to the edge, swaying, her eyes unfocused. I'd been coming home from one of Marcus's endless dinner parties, exhausted and honestly a little drunk myself, trying to process another night of being ignored and dismissed. The girl had teetered, and I'd seen it happening in slow motion. The train approaching, her body tilting forward, no one else paying attention, everyone glued to their phones. I'd grabbed her, yanked her back so hard we both fell onto the platform. She'd been high or drunk or both, barely conscious. I'd stayed with her, called 911, waited until the paramedics showed up, given them my name and number in case anyone needed a statement. And then I'd gone home, told Marcus I'd tripped and ruined my dress and tried to forget about it because he was already mad at me for leaving the party early. I'd never followed up, never checked to see if the girl was okay. The hospital had called once, maybe twice, but Marcus had been in one of his moods, accusing me of God knows what, and I'd been too caught up in survival mode to return the calls. Eventually, they stopped calling, and I'd let it fade into the background of all the other things I tried not to think about. Alexis, I breathed, the name coming back to me. The paramedic had said it, I thought, or maybe the girl had mumbled it before passing out. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Yes, our Alexis. She told us everything once she got into recovery, how you saved her life that night, how you stayed with her when everyone else just walked by. We've been trying to find you, to thank you properly, but you'd given a nickname to the hospital and your number had changed. Because Marcus had insisted I get a new phone, a new number, said my old contacts were trash, and I needed to leave my past behind. Another way to isolate me, to cut me off from anyone who knew me before I became his wife, his possession, his punching bag for every insecurity and failure. Where's she now? I asked. my voice cracking despite my best efforts. "Is she okay?" "She's upstairs," Richard said, his hand on my shoulder now, paternal and warm in a way my own father had never been. "She's been clean for 2 years. In college now, studying psychology. Wants to help people who've been where she was. And she's been desperate to meet you, to tell you herself what you did for us." Marcus finally found his voice. "Celine, you never told me about this." His tone was accusatory, like I'd committed some crime by not sharing every detail of my life with him. I turned to look at him, really look at him, and something inside me shifted. This man who'd spent 6 years making me feel small, worthless, beneath him, who just tonight told me I wasn't good enough for this crowd, that I'd embarrass him. And here I was being embraced by people he'd been desperate to impress for reasons that had nothing to do with money or status or any of the shallow garbage he valued. "I didn't think it mattered," I said simply, and watched his face twist. Victoria linked her arm through mine. "Come, let me introduce you to everyone. They're all dying to meet the woman who saved our little girl. And Marcus," she added, almost as an afterthought, "you're welcome to join us, of course." The next hour was surreal. I was passed from conversation to conversation, each person treating me like I was somebody important, somebody worth knowing. Not because of who I'd married or what I looked like or what I could do for them, but because of something real, something that mattered. I met Alexis, a beautiful young woman with her mother's eyes and her father's smile, who hugged me and cried and thanked me over and over until I was crying too. She was alive and healthy and full of dreams, and I'd played a part in that. Me, not Marcus's wife, not some trophy on a shelf. Just Celine who'd seen someone in trouble and done the right thing without thinking twice. Marcus trailed behind us, increasingly irrelevant, increasingly angry. I could see it building in him, that rage that would explode later when we got home. He'd accuse me of plotting this, of somehow orchestrating the whole thing to make him look bad. He'd pick apart every word I said, every person I talked to, every smile I gave. And then he'd punish me for it, in all the ways he'd perfected over 6 years. The ways that never left visible marks. But for now, for this one perfect moment, I didn't care. I let myself enjoy it. Let myself feel valued and seen and appreciated. I laughed at someone's joke without checking to see if Marcus approved. I accepted compliments without deflecting or making myself smaller. I ate food without counting calories or worrying about Marcus commenting on my weight later. I drank champagne and felt the bubbles on my tongue and let myself be happy, genuinely happy, for the first time in longer than I could remember. Richard pulled me aside as the party started winding down, led me to a quiet corner of the library that smelled like leather and expensive cigars. "Celine, I want you to know, if you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. Here." He pressed a business card into my hand, but not his normal one. This had his personal cell number handwritten on the back. "I mean it. Family helps family, and you're family now. You saved our daughter. That makes you one of us." Family? The word echoed in my head. I'd never really had that, not the kind he meant. My parents had been distant, cold, more interested in their own problems than in me. I had a brother somewhere, but we hadn't spoken in years after some fight I could barely remember. And Marcus's family had made it clear from day one that I wasn't good enough, that I was just some gold digger who trapped their precious son. Family had always been a weapon used against me, not a shelter offered to me. "Thank you," I whispered, tucking the card into my clutch. "That means more than you know." We found Marcus in the reception room, drink in hand, talking to some guy who looked bored out of his mind. The moment Marcus saw me, he drained his glass and stalked over. "We're leaving," he announced, not asking, not even pretending to be polite about it. Victoria appeared at my side. "So soon?" We were hoping you'd stay for coffee and dessert. Alexis wanted to talk more with you. My wife is tired, Marcus said, his hand clamping onto my arm again. Long day. We should get back. I could have argued, could have pulled away and stayed, but old habits died hard, and the part of me that had learned to pick her battles, to avoid escalation, to survive, kept my mouth shut. I said my goodbyes, hugged Alexis one more time, and let Marcus drag me back through that beautiful house and out to where the valet had brought our car around. The moment we were inside, doors closed, the mask dropped. What the hell was that? Marcus snarled, peeling out of the driveway like we were being chased. You set me up. You planned this whole thing to humiliate me. I didn't know, I said quietly, staring out the window at the estates flying past, each one a fortress of wealth and secrets. I swear, Marcus, I had no idea they'd be there or that they even knew who I was.
Bullshit. You expect me to believe that? You just happened to save Richard Ashford's daughter, and you just happened to never mention it? You were playing the long game, weren't you? Trying to work your way in without me, trying to make connections behind my back. That's insane, I shot back, my temper finally flaring. I helped someone 3 years ago. I didn't even know her last name until tonight. How exactly would I have planned any of this? He hit the steering wheel and I flinched. Don't give me that innocent act. I know you, Celine. I know how sneaky you can be, how manipulative. You think you're so much smarter than everyone else, don't you? Well, you're not. You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing. Without me, you'd still be serving drinks at charity events and screwing whoever could pay your rent. The words should have hurt. 6 years ago, they would have destroyed me. But something had changed tonight. Something had cracked open inside me, and instead of pain, I felt clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and saw him for what he was. Small, insecure, pathetic. A man who needed to tear others down to feel big, who measured his worth by how much he could control, how much he could take. Pull over, I said. What? Pull over. Now. We're on the highway, Celine. Don't be stupid. I said pull over. My voice came out stronger than I expected, strong enough that Marcus actually jerked the wheel and took the next exit, screeching into a deserted parking lot outside some closed business. He turned to me, and I saw fear flicker across his face. Just for a second, but it was there. Good. Let him be scared for once. Let him wonder what I was thinking, what I was planning. I'm done, I said quietly. I'm done with this. With you. With being treated like I'm worthless. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. You think you can leave me? With what money? What job? You haven't worked in 6 years. You have no skills, no connections except the ones I gave you. You'd be homeless in a month. Maybe, I agreed, my heart pounding but my voice steady. Or maybe Richard Ashford meant what he said. Maybe I do have connections now. Maybe I have people who see value in me that has nothing to do with you. His hand shot out, grabbed my face, forced me to look at him. His grip was tight enough to hurt, his eyes wild. You don't leave me, understand? You don't get to decide when this ends. I own you. That prenup you signed, you get nothing. Less than nothing. I'll bury you in legal fees and make sure everyone knows what you really are. I smiled. Actually smiled. Because for the first time, his threats felt empty. Let go of me, Marcus. He did, eventually, but the fury radiating off him was palpable. We drove the rest of the way home in silence, and I stared out the window and planned. For the first time in 6 years, I let myself imagine a life without him, a life where I wasn't afraid, wasn't controlled, wasn't slowly dying inside. When we got back to the penthouse, Marcus went straight to his study and slammed the door. I heard him on the phone, voice raised, probably calling his lawyer, or his mother, or whoever he vented to about me. I walked to our bedroom, our prison of Egyptian cotton and custom furniture, and I pulled out my phone. Found the card Richard had given me, stared at that handwritten number. Not yet. I wasn't ready yet, but soon. Soon I'd make that call. Soon I'd figure out how to burn down
everything Marcus had built his identity on, how to take back the pieces of myself he'd stolen. Soon I'd stop being his victim and become his worst nightmare. But tonight, I just stood at the window, overlooking Manhattan, all those lights stretching out forever, and I let myself feel something dangerous. Hope. After years of suffocating darkness, after countless nights crying silently so Marcus wouldn't hear, after so many moments where I'd wondered if it would be easier to just disappear, I felt hope stirring inside me like something waking from a long sleep. Tomorrow, I'd start planning. Tomorrow, I'd figure out my next move. But tonight, I let myself remember the look on Marcus's face when Richard Ashford had chosen me over him, had valued me over him, had seen me when Marcus had spent 6 years trying to make me invisible. And that memory, that beautiful, savage moment, felt like the beginning of something. Maybe revenge. Maybe justice. Maybe just the first breath after being underwater too long. Whatever it was, I wanted more of it. I needed more of it. And I was going to take it no matter what it cost. But Marcus wasn't the only one with secrets. And the text message that would arrive on my phone in exactly 48 hours would change everything I thought I knew about the night I saved Alexis, about Richard Ashford's real reasons for welcoming me into his world, and about the dangerous game I'd just agreed to play without even realizing it. The text came through at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, 2 days after the Ashford party, while I was lying in bed pretending to sleep. Marcus was snoring beside me, dead to the world after 3 scotches and whatever pills he'd been popping lately to deal with his stress. The phone buzzed against the nightstand, loud enough to make me jump, but not loud enough to wake him. I grabbed it fast, my heart already racing because nobody texted me at this hour. Nobody texted me much at all anymore. Unknown number. I almost deleted it without reading, figured it was spam or some wrong number situation. But something made me open it. Maybe curiosity, maybe just the desperate hope that anything happening at 2:47 a.m. had to be more interesting than my life. The message was short, just 2 sentences that made my blood run cold. We need to talk about what really happened that night on the subway platform. Tomorrow, noon, Bryant Park, by the fountain. Come alone. I stared at those words until they blurred, my mind spinning through possibilities. Was this some kind of scam? A threat? Marcus setting me up for something? But no, Marcus was too obvious for this kind of thing, too blunt. When he wanted to hurt me, he did it directly, with words or hands or financial control, not cryptic late-night messages. This was something else. Something that made my skin crawl and my pulse hammer, because whoever sent this knew about Alexis, knew about that night, knew things I'd barely let myself remember. I couldn't sleep after that. Just lay there in the dark, listening to Marcus breathe, watching the city lights paint shadows on our ceiling, turning those 2 sentences over and over in my head. What really happened? I knew what happened. I'd saved a girl from falling in front of a train. I'd done something good, maybe the only purely good thing I'd done in years. What else was there to know? By the time morning came, I was exhausted and wired at the same time. That dangerous combination where everything feels too bright and too sharp. Marcus left early for the office without saying goodbye, which was normal. We'd barely spoken since the party, just existed in the same space like hostile roommates. He was planning something, I could feel it, but I had bigger problems now. I had to decide whether to go to Bryant Park, whether to walk into whatever trap or revelation or mindfuck was waiting for me there. Of course I was going. Who was I kidding? I'd been dying slowly in this penthouse for 6 years, suffocating under Marcus's control and my own cowardice. A mysterious text message promising to blow up my understanding of the one good thing I'd done? Yeah, I was absolutely going. I got there 20 minutes early because I'm not stupid, wanted to scope out the scene before whoever this was showed up. Bryant Park was crowded, even on a Tuesday. Tourists and office workers on lunch breaks, street performers doing their thing. That beautiful chaos that made New York feel alive. I bought a coffee from one of those overpriced carts and sat on a bench with a clear view of the fountain, watching faces, looking for anyone who seemed too interested in me.
At exactly noon, a woman sat down beside me. Not next to me like coincidence, but beside me like purpose. Close enough that our knees almost touched. She was maybe 40, dressed in an expensive pantsuit that screamed lawyer or executive, dark hair pulled back tight, sunglasses even though it wasn't that bright. For a second I thought about running, about getting up and disappearing into the crowd, but she spoke before I could move. Celine Blackwood, born Celine Rodriguez in a nowhere town in Pennsylvania. Worked your way through community college, majored in art history of all useless things. Met Marcus Blackwood 6 years ago when you were catering a charity gala. Married him 3 months later. No prenup at first, but he made you sign one after the honeymoon when you were still in that honeymoon phase where you would have signed anything. Her voice was calm, factual, like she was reading my credit report. You want me to keep going, or are you ready to listen? Who the hell are you? I managed, my voice coming out shakier than I wanted. Someone who knows the truth about that night 3 years ago. Someone who knows what Richard Ashford is really after. And someone who can help you get out of your marriage with enough money to never worry about Marcus again. She turned to look at me, pulled down her sunglasses just enough that I could see her eyes. They were cold, calculating. The eyes of someone who played chess while everyone else was playing checkers. But first, you need to understand what you walked into at that party. You need to understand what you really saved Alexis from. My coffee was getting cold in my hand. She was high or drunk or something, standing too close to the platform. I pulled her back. That's it. That's what happened. That's what you saw. That's not what happened. The woman pulled out a tablet from her bag, sleek and expensive, tapped it a few times and turned it toward me. A video started playing, grainy surveillance footage from a subway platform. I recognized it immediately, felt sick recognition wash over me. 3 years ago, that night, the footage showed Alexis exactly where I remembered her, swaying near the edge. But there was something else, something I hadn't seen because I'd been too far away, too focused on the immediate danger. A man standing behind her. Not close enough to be obviously connected, but close enough. And as the train approached, as Alexis started to tilt forward, you could see him move. Just slightly, just enough. A hand near her back, a subtle push. Jesus Christ, I whispered, watching myself rush into frame, grab Alexis, pull us both down, watching the man disappear into the crowd before anyone could notice him. Someone tried to kill her. Someone did kill her, she corrected. Or at least someone was hired to make it look like a tragic accident. Drugged college girl falls in front of a train. Case closed, family devastated, but no investigation because what's to investigate? Except you screwed up the plan. You saved her. And the person who hired that man, the person who wanted Alexis dead, has been trying to figure out who you were ever since.
I couldn't breathe. The park was spinning around me. All those people going about their normal days, while my entire reality cracked open. Richard? I said, the name tasting like poison. Richard Ashford tried to have his own daughter killed? Not Richard. Victoria. The woman took the tablet back, tucked it away. Victoria Ashford, devoted mother, philanthropist, society queen. She's also a woman with a very specific problem. Alexis wasn't Richard's biological daughter. She was the result of an affair Victoria had 23 years ago with Richard's business partner, a man who died conveniently in a car accident shortly after Alexis was born. Richard never knew, never suspected, until Alexis decided to do one of those DNA ancestry tests 2 years ago for a college project. The timeline, I said slowly, pieces clicking together in my head. Alexis got clean 2 years ago, right after the subway incident. Right after Victoria found out Alexis had sent off her DNA and panicked. See, if Alexis's DNA went into those databases and if Richard ever decided to do his own test, the truth would come out. Victoria would lose everything. The marriage, the money, the position, the respect. Everything she'd built her entire identity on. So she made a choice. She hired someone to make sure Alexis never got those results, never had a chance to destroy Victoria's perfect life. I thought I might throw up. That beautiful woman who'd hugged me, who'd cried and thanked me for saving her daughter, had tried to murder that same daughter, had hired someone to push a drugged girl in front of a train.
and I'd stopped it. I'd ruined her plan without even knowing there was a plan to ruin. But if this is true, if you know all this, why did Victoria and Richard throw that party? Why did they act like I was some hero? Why didn't Victoria just, I don't know, hire someone to get rid of me too? My voice cracked on that last part because the fear was real now, ice cold and sharp in my chest. Because Richard doesn't know, the woman said. Richard thinks his wife is grateful. He thinks Alexis really was just a troubled kid who got too messed up one night and nearly died by accident. He thinks you're a guardian angel, and Victoria can't do anything to you without raising his suspicions, not now that he's made you part of the family, not now that everyone in their circle knows who you are. She's trapped. And trust me, she's furious about it. How do you know all this? I demanded. Who are you really? She smiled, but it wasn't friendly. I'm Diane Chen. I'm a private investigator, and I was hired by Marcus's first wife to follow him before their divorce. That's how I know so much about you, about your marriage, about the prenup he forced on you. I've been keeping tabs on Manhattan's elite for 15 years, and I'm very good at uncovering secrets people want buried. Victoria Ashford hired that man through 3 layers of intermediaries. But money leaves trails if you know where to look. I found the trail. I found the surveillance footage the police never bothered to check because nobody reported a crime. And I found you. Why tell me this? What do you want? Nothing was free. I'd learned that lesson the hard way.
I want to take down Victoria Ashford, Diane said simply. She's gotten away with attempted murder, with fraud, with manipulating everyone around her for decades. But I can't touch her without proof that would hold up in court. And right now, all I have is circumstantial evidence and footage that could be interpreted as a clumsy drunk getting too close to someone. I need more. I need you. Me? I don't have anything. I didn't see the guy behind her. I didn't know any of this was happening. But you're inside now. Richard gave you his personal number. He told you to call if you need anything. Told you you're family. Victoria has to play nice with you in public, has to pretend she's grateful. But I guarantee she's looking for ways to discredit you, to push you out, to make sure you never get close enough to Richard to accidentally reveal something she doesn't want revealed. Diane leaned in closer. I want you to do the opposite. I want you to get close to that family. Find proof of what Victoria did. Help me put her away. And in return, I'll help you divorce Marcus with enough ammunition to bypass that prenup and take him for everything he's worth. It was insane. Completely batshit insane. Getting involved with a family where the mother had tried to kill her own daughter, playing detective with a PI I'd just met, risking whatever safety I had left. The smart move was to walk away, to delete that text, to forget this conversation ever happened. But then I thought about Marcus, about 6 more years or 16 more years of being nothing, being controlled, being slowly erased. I thought about that moment at the Ashford party when I'd felt valued for the first time in forever. And I thought about Alexis, alive and happy and studying psychology, having no idea her own mother had tried to erase her like a mistake on a balance sheet. What would I have to do? I asked. Diane pulled out a phone, different from the one she'd used to text me, and handed it over. Burner. Only contact me on this. I'll walk you through everything. First step is accepting Richard's offer of friendship. Get invited to charity events, whatever. Spend time with them. Pay attention. Victoria's smart, but everyone makes mistakes when they're stressed, and you stress her out just by existing. Eventually, she'll slip up, and when she does, you'll be there to catch it. And if she figures out what I'm doing, if she decides I'm too much of a threat, then you call me immediately and we extract you. I won't let you get hurt, Celine. I'm not a monster like her. Diane stood up, smoothed down her suit. But I need an answer now. Are you in or out? Because if you're out, I walk away and you never hear from me again. You go back to your penthouse and your abusive husband and your slow death, and Victoria Ashford gets away with trying to murder her own kid. I looked at the phone in my hand. Looked at the people walking past us, living their normal lives, not having to make choices like this. I could still say no. Could still choose safety over justice, survival over truth. I'm in, I said.
And it felt like jumping off a cliff. Terrifying and exhilarating and irreversible.
Good. Diane walked away without looking back, disappeared into the crowd like she'd never been there at all. I sat on that bench for another 20 minutes, holding the burner phone, trying to process what I'd just agreed to. Then I pulled out my real phone and called Richard Ashford's number before I could talk myself out of it. He answered on the second ring. "Celine, I was hoping you'd call. How are you?" "I'm good," I lied, my voice surprisingly steady. "I was wondering if you and Victoria might want to get coffee sometime this week. I'd love to talk more about Alexis's recovery journey. I've been thinking about maybe volunteering with addiction recovery programs, and I'd appreciate your guidance." "That would be wonderful," Richard said, warmth flooding through the phone. "Victoria will be thrilled. How about Thursday afternoon? There's a lovely cafe near our office, very private, perfect for a real conversation." "Thursday sounds perfect," I agreed, even though nothing about this was perfect. Nothing about this was even close to okay. We made the plans, and I hung up and sat there with both phones in my hands, thinking about Victoria Ashford's face when she found out I'd be spending even more time with her family. Thinking about Marcus's face when he eventually realized I wasn't as helpless as he'd made me believe. Thinking about that man on the subway platform, hired to murder a girl for money, and how close he'd come to succeeding. I went home, and Marcus was already there. Unusual for a Tuesday afternoon. He was in his study, door open, talking to someone on speakerphone. I started to walk past, but his voice stopped me. "No, I need the paperwork done by Friday. I want her declared incompetent, get a psych evaluation scheduled, whatever it takes." A pause. "I don't care if it's aggressive. My wife has been acting erratic, making connections with people I don't trust, talking about leaving me. I need to secure my assets before she does something stupid." My blood turned to ice. He was trying to have me declared mentally incompetent, trying to lock me up or at least lock down any claim I might have to anything we owned. I backed away slowly, quietly, before he could see me. Made it to our bedroom and closed the door with shaking hands. The burner phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Diane. "Just heard Marcus is making moves. We need to accelerate the timeline. Coffee with the Ashfords Thursday is good, but I need you to plant surveillance in their home office. I'll teach you how tomorrow. Can you get away from Marcus for a few hours in the morning?" I texted back. "Yes. Where?" "Same place. 9 a.m. Bring appetite for expensive breakfast and learning how to bug a mansion." "You're doing great, Celine. Don't lose your nerve now." I deleted the text and hid the phone in the back of my closet, under a box of shoes I never wore. Then I walked to our bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked, the way I hadn't in years. I saw a woman who'd been beaten down but not broken, scared but not paralyzed, trapped but maybe, finally, finding a way out. Marcus wanted to declare me crazy. Victoria wanted me gone. They could both go to hell. I was done being the victim in my own story. I was done letting powerful people treat me like I was disposable. Diane had given me a weapon, dangerous and double-edged, but a weapon nonetheless, and I was going to learn how to use it. That night at dinner, Marcus barely spoke to me, which was fine. I picked up my food and played the dutiful wife and let him think he was winning, let him think his plan was working. Because the best revenge wasn't getting mad, it was getting even. It was watching your enemies destroy themselves while thinking they were destroying you. Thursday came faster than I expected. I met Diane Wednesday morning, and she taught me how to plant tiny cameras and audio devices, gave me equipment that looked like regular jewelry and accessories, coached me on what to look for, what questions to ask, how to steer conversations without being obvious about it. She was intense, focused, professional. She'd been doing this for 15 years, and it showed. "Victoria will be suspicious no matter what you do," Diane warned as we finished up. "Your job isn't to avoid suspicion, it's to seem harmless enough that she underestimates you. Play the grateful girl who's in over her head. Ask naive questions. Let Richard dominate the conversation. And whatever you do, don't let her see how smart you actually are. Being underestimated? Yeah, I've got experience with that. Thursday afternoon, I met the Ashfords at the cafe Richard had suggested, a place with velvet booths and dim lighting where Manhattan's elite went to have conversations they didn't want overheard. Richard was already there when I arrived, but Victoria was late. Fashionably late. The kind of late that said she'd rather be anywhere else. When she finally showed up, her smile was perfect and completely empty. "Celine, darling, I'm so sorry. Meeting ran over. You know how it is." She kissed both my cheeks, European style, and I caught a whiff of her perfume, something expensive and cold, like her. "No problem at all," I said, channeling every acting skill I'd developed over 6 years with Marcus. "I was just telling Richard how excited I am to learn more about addiction recovery work." We ordered drinks and appetizers neither of us would eat, and Richard launched into stories about Alexis's journey, about the rehab program that had saved her, about the foundation he and Victoria supported that helped young people struggling with addiction. He was passionate, genuine, clearly a man who loved his daughter and wanted to honor the second chance she'd been given. Victoria smiled and nodded and said all the right things, but I watched her eyes. Watched the way they hardened whenever Richard mentioned Alexis's recovery, whenever he talked about how grateful he was that his daughter was alive. She was good, but she wasn't perfect. Nobody was perfect. "I'd love to see the Foundation's office sometime," I said casually. "If that's not too much of an imposition, I really want to understand how everything works before I commit to volunteering." "Absolutely," Richard agreed immediately. "In fact, why don't you come to the house this Sunday? We're having a small family dinner, just us and Alexis and a few close friends. You could see Alexis again, meet some of the people involved with the foundation, get a real sense of what we do." I watched Victoria's face carefully. Saw something flash there, gone too quick to name, but definitely not happiness. "That's very generous," I said, "but I wouldn't want to intrude on family time." "Nonsense," Richard insisted. "You're family now. Victoria, tell her." Victoria's smile could have cut glass. "Of course, we'd be delighted to have you. Please, bring Marcus if he's available." "He's been so busy lately," I said, which wasn't even a lie. "But I'll definitely come. Thank you." We finished our coffee, and I excused myself to the bathroom, pulling out the burner phone the second I was alone. Texted Diane, "Dinner at their house Sunday. Opportunity to plant devices?" Response came back in seconds. "Perfect. I'll prep everything. Meet me Friday, same time, same place. You're a natural at this." I wasn't sure natural was the right word. Desperate, maybe. Reckless, definitely. But as I walked back to the table and saw Victoria watching me with those cold, calculating eyes, I knew I'd made the right choice. She was scared of me. I could feel it. Scared of what I represented, what I might know, what I might reveal. And scared people made mistakes. I just had to be patient enough to catch hers. Sunday dinner at the Ashford mansion would change everything. Because while I was planning to spy on Victoria, someone else was planning to make their move. And the revelation waiting for me in Richard's home office would prove that nothing about this family was what it seemed. That Victoria wasn't the only one with blood on her hands, and that the real reason Richard had welcomed me into their world had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the one secret even Diane Chen hadn't uncovered. Sunday came wrapped in that perfect fall weather that made Manhattan feel like a movie set, all golden light and crisp air that smelled like possibilities. I stood in front of my closet, trying to figure out what you wear to plant surveillance devices in a mansion while having dinner with people who might want you dead. Settled on a simple black dress, elegant but not trying too hard, with a cardigan that had pockets deep enough to hide the equipment Diane had given me. The cameras looked like decorative buttons, the audio device like a designer pen. Nobody would look twice. Marcus had left early for the office again, some emergency meeting he claimed he couldn't miss. More likely, he was meeting with his lawyer, working on whatever plan he had to lock me away or strip me of everything. I'd heard him on the phone twice more this week, each conversation making it clearer that he saw me as a problem to be solved, not a person to be reasoned with. Fine. Let him plot. I was plotting too, and my plan involved more than just lawyers and paperwork. The burner phone buzzed as I was applying lipstick. Diane's message was short. Remember, you were looking for financial documents, anything connecting Victoria to wire transfers around the time of the incident. His office safe is behind the painting of the sailboat. Code is his wedding anniversary backwards. Don't ask me how I know. Good luck. I stared at that last line. Don't ask me how I know. Diane Chen had resources I couldn't begin to understand, connections that went deeper than any PI should have. For a second, I wondered if I'd traded one dangerous situation for another, if trusting her was just another version of trusting Marcus. But it was too late for doubts now. I was already in the water. Might as well swim. The Uber dropped me off at the Ashford estate just after 6. The place looked different in daylight, less like a fairy tale and more like a fortress, all that old money security disguised as elegance. The same butler answered the door, recognized me immediately, and his smile seemed genuine enough that I wondered what he knew, what he'd seen working in this house. Mrs. Blackwood, welcome. The family is in the conservatory. May I take your coat? I handed over my jacket, but kept the cardigan. Followed him through halls lined with art that could probably fund a small country's GDP. Voices drifted from somewhere ahead, laughter and conversation that sounded warm and normal and completely at odds with everything I knew about this family. Richard's voice, Alexis's bright laugh, and underneath it all, Victoria's measured tones directing the conversation like a conductor with an orchestra. They were all there when I walked in, gathered around a table set with crystal and china that probably cost more than my first car. Richard stood immediately, came over to embrace me like I was actually family, and the genuine affection in his face made my stomach twist. This man had no idea what his wife had done, what she'd tried to do, what she was still capable of. He lived in a beautiful lie, and I was about to help destroy it. "Celine, I'm so glad you could make it," he said, guiding me to a seat between him and Alexis. "We were just talking about the Foundation's new youth outreach program. I think you'll find it fascinating." Alexis hugged me tight, and I could feel how healthy she was now, how strong. Nothing like that girl swaying on a subway platform. "I've been looking forward to this all week," she said. "I wanted to talk to you more about that night. I know it's weird, but I don't remember much, and I've been trying to piece together what happened." Victoria's fork scraped against her plate, just slightly, but I heard it. "Darling, I'm sure Celine doesn't want to relive a traumatic event during dinner." "It's okay," I said, meeting Victoria's eyes across the table. Her face was perfectly composed, but something flickered in those cold eyes. Fear? Rage? Both? "I'm happy to talk about it if it helps." Dinner was a performance, and we were all actors playing our parts. Richard talked about business and philanthropy, dropping names of senators and CEOs like they were neighbors he borrowed sugar from. Alexis talked about her psychology classes, her dreams of opening her own practice someday, specializing in addiction counseling. Victoria smiled and nodded and played the perfect hostess, but I watched her watch me, calculating every word I said, every move I made. The cameras and audio device in my cardigan pockets felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. I needed to get to Richard's office, needed to plant them before dinner ended and my window closed. But how? I couldn't just excuse myself and wander around their house without raising suspicion. The opportunity came from Alexis, bless her. "Hey, Celine, want to see my room? I've got photos from that semester before everything went sideways, and I thought maybe seeing them would help me remember more about that night." "I'd love to," and Victoria's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Let's let them have their girl talk," Richard said, pouring himself more wine. "Victoria, you were saying something about the charity auction next month?" Alexis led me upstairs, chattering about her classes and her boyfriend and her plans for the future, blissfully unaware that her mother had tried to erase all of it. Her room was enormous, decorated in that tasteful way that screamed expensive interior designer. But she'd made it her own with posters and photos and the kind of comfortable chaos that came from actually living in a space. She showed me pictures on her phone, her face in that screen glow making her look young and vulnerable. "This was taken the day before," she said, showing me a photo of her with friends at some campus party. "I look happy, right? But I was already using, already spiraling. I'd been taking these pills my roommate gave me, said they'd help me study, help me focus, but they just made everything worse." "Did you tell your parents?" I asked, my investigator instincts kicking in despite myself. "My mom knew. I told her a few weeks before the incident. She said she'd handle it, that she'd find me the best treatment, that everything would be okay." Alexis's voice got quiet. But then nothing happened. She kept saying she was making calls, setting things up, but no rehab, no intervention, nothing. It was like she was waiting for something. Waiting for me to die, I thought, but didn't say. Waiting for the problem to solve itself permanently. "I need to use the bathroom," I said, standing up. "Down the hall?" "2 doors down on the right," Alexis said, already scrolling to more photos. I slipped out, but instead of going to the bathroom, I headed in the opposite direction, toward where I remembered Richard's office being from the house tour he'd given everyone at the party. The hallway was quiet, too quiet. Every footstep on that expensive carpet sounded like thunder in my ears. I found the office door unlocked, pushed it open, and stepped inside. The room smelled like leather and cigars and money, all dark wood and heavy furniture that spoke of generations of power. The painting of the sailboat hung exactly where Diane said it would be, and behind it, sure enough, a wall safe. I pulled out my phone to check the date they'd been married, reversed the numbers the way Diane had instructed, and the safe clicked open on my first try. Inside were stacks of documents, some bound with those little metal clips lawyers love, others loose. I grabbed my phone and started photographing everything, page after page, not even sure what I was looking at, but trusting that Diane would know.
Financial records, wire transfers, account statements from banks in countries I'd never heard of. And then, near the bottom, a folder labeled simply A, in Victoria's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were medical records. Alexis's medical records from 3 years ago, documenting injuries from the subway platform incident. But there was something else, a psychological evaluation dated 2 weeks before that night, commissioned by Victoria. The psychiatrist's report was clinical, cold, noting Alexis's drug use, her declining mental health, her risk for self-harm or accident. And at the bottom, Victoria's handwritten note. Confirm prognosis. Need documentation that condition was pre-existing and untreatable. She'd been building her cover story before she even hired the hitman, making sure that if Alexis died, it would look like inevitable tragedy, a troubled girl who couldn't be saved despite her mother's best efforts. The calculation, the coldness of it made me want to vomit. I photographed everything, hands trembling so badly I had to steady my phone against the desk. Then I carefully put it all back, closed the safe, repositioned the painting. The button cameras went behind books on the shelf, the audio device tucked inside a decorative box on his desk. It took less than 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. "Find everything you were looking for?" I spun around, and there was Victoria, standing in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light so I couldn't see her face clearly. My heart stopped. Actually stopped, and then started hammering so hard I thought she'd hear it. "I got lost, looking for the bathroom," I said, proud that my voice came out steady. "I was just admiring Richard's office. It's beautiful." Victoria stepped inside and closed the door behind her, and suddenly the room felt very small, very dangerous. "Let's not play games, Celine. I know what you are. I know why you're really here." "I'm here because Richard invited me, because I saved your daughter's life." "Because you ruined everything," Victoria hissed. And there it was, the mask finally dropping. Her face twisted with rage, with hatred so pure it was almost beautiful in its intensity. "Do you have any idea what you've cost me? What you've destroyed? I had it all planned perfectly. A tragic accident, a mother's grief, a family rallying together. But you had to play hero. You had to stick your nose into something that had nothing to do with you. She's your daughter, I said, backing up as Victoria advanced. Your own child, and you tried to murder her? She's not Richard's daughter.
She's proof of my mistake, a living reminder of the one time I was weak, the one time I let emotion override judgment. And when she decided to do that stupid DNA test, when she threatened to expose everything, I made a choice. My life, my position, my power, or hers. It wasn't even a difficult decision. "You're insane," I breathed, my back hitting Richard's desk. "I'm practical," Victoria corrected. "I'm a survivor. And I'm not going to let some nobody waitress destroy 30 years of careful work. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of this house tonight. You're going to tell Richard you've reconsidered the volunteer work, that you're too busy with your own life. You're going to disappear. And if you don't, if you tried to tell anyone what you think you know, I'll make sure Marcus's lawyers have you committed by the end of the week. Oh yes, I know about that too. He called me for advice. Turns out we have a lot in common, your husband and I. We both understand the importance of controlling our assets. The burner phone in my pocket felt like it was burning. If I could just press record, if I could get her to repeat what she'd just said. But before I could move, the office door swung open again. "Mom? Celine? Everything okay?" Alexis stood there, confused, looking between us. And behind her, Richard. His face already shifting from concern to confusion as he took in the scene. Me backed against his desk, Victoria blocking the door, the tension so thick you could cut it. "We were just having a conversation about boundaries," Victoria said smoothly, the mask sliding back into place so fast it was dizzying. "Celine was snooping in your office, darling, and I was explaining that even family has limits." "I wasn't snooping," I said, and I pulled out my phone, the one that had been recording since the moment Victoria started talking. Thank God for voice activation. Thank God for paranoia. I was documenting evidence of attempted murder. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Alexis just stood there, frozen, not understanding. Victoria's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the exact moment she realized that she'd lost, that her carefully constructed world was crashing down. "You recorded me," she said flatly. "That's illegal. Without consent." New York is a one-party consent state, and I think attempted murder trumps wiretapping laws anyway. But if you want to talk about illegal, let's talk about the wire transfer you made 3 years ago to a shell corporation in the Caymans. Let's talk about the man you hired to push your daughter in front of a train. Let's talk about the evidence I just photographed from Richard's safe, including your lovely notes about making sure Alexis's death would look like an accident. Richard made a sound like he'd been punched. "Victoria? What is she talking about? Don't listen to her," Victoria said, but her voice had lost that confident edge. "She's clearly mentally unstable. Marcus warned me she'd been acting erratically, making wild accusations." "I have proof," I said quietly. "Security footage from the subway platform showing the man you hired, financial records connecting you to him, your own handwriting documenting your plan. And now I have you, on tape, admitting you tried to kill Alexis because she's not Richard's biological daughter." Alexis gasped, a small wounded sound, and Richard's face crumbled. "Not my daughter?" he whispered. "Alexis isn't mine?" "Biologically, no," I said gently, "because he didn't deserve this pain. Didn't deserve any of this.
But that doesn't make her any less your daughter in every way that matters. You raised her, loved her, saved her after her mother tried to kill her. That's what makes you her father. Victoria lunged at me, and I wasn't ready for it. Wasn't ready for how fast she moved or how strong she was. Her hands were around my throat before I could react, squeezing, her face twisted with rage and desperation. I heard Alexis scream, heard Richard shouting, but it all sounded far away, underwater. My vision started to blur, my phone clattering to the floor. And then Richard was there, pulling Victoria off me, his face a mask of betrayal and rage I'd never seen before. "Security!" he roared, and suddenly the room was full of people, the butler and two men in suits who must have been private security, all of them restraining Victoria as she fought and screamed. "She's lying. She's working with Marcus to destroy us. Can't you see it's a setup?" "I see," Richard said, his voice broken, "that I've been married to a monster for 30 years and never knew it."
Victoria was arrested, dragged out of her own mansion in handcuffs, still screaming about injustice and conspiracies. I gave my statement, showed the police the recording, the photos from the safe, everything. My throat hurt where Victoria had grabbed me, bruises already forming, but I barely felt it. Alexis sat with her father on the conservatory couch, both of them crying, trying to process the fact that the woman they'd loved had tried to destroy their family. "I don't understand," Alexis kept saying. "My whole life, she was my mom. She loved me. How could she do this?" "She loved her position more," I said quietly, sitting down beside her. "She loved her power, her status, her perfect life. And when you threatened that, even accidentally, she chose herself. Some people are wired that way. They can't see past their own needs." Richard looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "You saved her twice, once on that platform and once tonight. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me," I said. "You just need to be there for your daughter. Because biology doesn't mean anything. You're her father in every way that counts." It was almost midnight when I finally left, Diane driving me home because I was shaking too hard to trust myself behind a wheel. We didn't talk much, just sat in comfortable silence while Manhattan blurred past the windows. "Diane knows," she said finally, as we pulled up to my building. "The police contacted him as your spouse. He's probably inside right now preparing his defense." "Let him prepare," I said, surprised by how calm I felt. "I've got everything I need to bury him in court. The prenup won't hold up when they see evidence of his abuse, his attempts to have me declared incompetent, his financial manipulation, and with Richard Ashford as my witness, Marcus doesn't stand a chance." "You've changed," Diane observed. "A week ago you could barely admit you wanted out. Now you're talking about burying him in court." "A week ago I was drowning. Now I'm swimming. There's a difference." Marcus was indeed waiting for me, pacing in the living room like a caged animal. He started yelling before I even got my coat off, accusations and threats pouring out so fast I could barely follow them. But I didn't need to follow them. I just stood there, calm and centered, and let him burn himself out. When he finally ran out of steam, I spoke. "I want a divorce. I've already contacted a lawyer, and I have evidence of your abuse, your financial manipulation, and your attempts to have me institutionalized. The prenup is void. I'm taking half of everything, plus damages for emotional distress. And if you fight me on this, if you try any of your usual tricks, I'll make sure everyone in your professional circle knows exactly what kind of man you are." His face went purple. "You can't do this. You're nothing without me. Nobody." "I'm the woman who saved Richard Ashford's daughter," I said quietly. "Twice. I'm the woman who took down Victoria Ashford and exposed attempted murder. I'm the woman who survived 6 years of your bullshit and came out stronger. I'm a lot of things, Marcus, but nothing? No, never again." I walked past him to our bedroom, packed a bag with essentials, and called Richard. He answered immediately, his voice worried. "Celine, are you okay?" "I need a place to stay for a few days while I sort out my divorce. Do you know anywhere safe?"
"You'll stay at the estate," he said firmly. "In the guest house. I insist. After everything you've done for us, it's the least I can offer." So that's where I went, leaving Marcus alone in that penthouse with his rage and his lawyers and his slowly crumbling empire. The guest house at the Ashford estate was bigger than my childhood home, all elegance and comfort and the first real peace I'd felt in years. The divorce took 3 months to finalize, but Marcus didn't fight it in the end. He couldn't, not with Diane's evidence and Richard's lawyers and the very real threat of his reputation being destroyed. He paid out a settlement that left me financially secure for life, and I walked away from that marriage with my head high and my soul intact. Victoria went to trial, was convicted of attempted murder and fraud, sentenced to 25 years in a prison that probably didn't serve champagne or host charity galas. Richard and Alexis testified against her, and I watched from the gallery as justice finally caught up with a woman who'd thought herself untouchable. Marcus, I heard later, had moved to California, started over somewhere far from the Manhattan circles where everyone now knew him as the man who tried to institutionalize his wife. Good riddance. 6 months after everything went down, I was sitting in Bryant Park again, same bench where Diane had first approached me. She'd become a friend, weird as that sounded, the kind of friend who understood darkness because she'd lived in it herself. "So, what now?" she asked, handing me a coffee. "You've got money, freedom, a standing invitation to every society event in Manhattan thanks to Richard. What does Celine Blackwood do next?" I smiled, watching the city move around us. All those people living their lives, some of them maybe trapped like I'd been, some of them maybe finding their own way out. "I'm starting a foundation," I said, "for women trying to leave abusive marriages. Legal help, financial support, safe housing. Everything I wish I'd had 6 years ago. Richard's already offered to match whatever you put in," Diane said with a knowing smile. "I may have mentioned your idea to him." "Of course you did." I laughed, and it felt good, natural, like something I'd almost forgotten how to do. You know what the weirdest part is? I spent 6 years thinking I was worthless, believing Marcus when he said I was nothing, and it turned out I was strong enough to take down 2 people who thought they were untouchable. I just needed to remember who I was before he tried to erase me. "That's the thing about people like Marcus and Victoria," Diane said. "They think power means controlling others, breaking them down, making them small. But real power is knowing yourself, standing up when it would be easier to stay down, choosing to fight even when you're scared out of your mind." I thought about that night at the Ashford party, about Marcus telling me not to embarrass him, about how sure he'd been that I was beneath everyone there. And I thought about the look on his face when Richard had chosen me, had valued me, had seen something in me that Marcus never could. "You want to know what I learned from all this?" I said, finishing my coffee. "I learned that the people who try hardest to make you feel small are usually the ones who are terrified you'll realize how powerful you actually are. I learned that doing the right thing, even when it's scary, even when it costs you, is the only way to live with yourself. And I learned that family isn't about blood or marriage certificates or social position. It's about the people who stand with you when everything falls apart, who see you at your worst and choose to stay anyway." "That's pretty profound for a girl from nowhere, Pennsylvania," Diane teased. "Yeah, well, trauma makes philosophers of us all." I shot back, and we both laughed. I still saw Richard and Alexis regularly. He'd become the father figure I'd never had, and Alexis and I had formed a bond that went deeper than friendship. We were survivors, both of us, marked by the same woman's cruelty and saved by the same moment of grace on a subway platform. We understood each other in ways nobody else could. Marcus I never saw again, and that was fine with me. Some chapters needed to close completely. No epilogue, no looking back. He'd taught me what I didn't want, who I refused to become, and sometimes those lessons were just as valuable as the positive ones. As for Victoria, she sent me one letter from prison. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won out. It was short, just a few lines.
You think you've won, but you've only traded one cage for another. You'll spend the rest of your life defined by what happened to you, by the woman you saved, by the marriage you escaped. You'll never be free of it. I burned the letter and scattered the ashes in the East River. She was wrong. I wasn't defined by my trauma or my survival. I was defined by what I chose to do next, by the foundation I was building, by the women I was helping escape their own Marcus Blackwoods and Victoria Ashfords. I was defined by moving forward, by refusing to let the past dictate my future. That's the thing about revenge. Real revenge isn't destroying your enemies, though watching them face consequences is satisfying as hell.
Real revenge is living well, is building something beautiful from the wreckage they left behind, is proving that they didn't break you no matter how hard they tried. Real revenge is being happy, genuinely happy, in a way they'll never understand because they're too busy trying to control and manipulate and maintain their illusions of power. I stood at the window of my new apartment, my place that I'd bought with my own money, decorated with my own taste, filled with my own life. And I smiled, because somewhere out there, Marcus was probably still angry, still bitter, still blaming me for his fall. And Victoria was sitting in a cell, probably still convinced she'd done nothing wrong, that she'd been the victim of some cosmic injustice. They were both trapped in their own hells of their own making. But me? I was free. Finally, completely, impossibly free. And that freedom, that lightness, that ability to wake up every morning and choose my own path without fear or control or manipulation, that was worth every terrifying moment of the journey. The moral, if there is one, is this. The people who try to make you small are usually the ones most terrified of your actual size. The ones who tell you you're nothing are the ones who need you to believe it because your power threatens theirs. And the moment you stop believing their lies, the moment you remember who you are beneath all the damage they've done, that's when you become truly dangerous to them. Not because you'll destroy them, though sometimes justice requires consequences, but because you'll prove that they were never as powerful as they pretended to be, that their control was always an illusion you could shatter by simply refusing to participate in their game anymore. Stand up, even when you're shaking, even when you're scared, even when it would be so much easier to stay small and quiet and safe. Stand up, speak your truth, and trust that you're stronger than anyone who tried to convince you otherwise. That's how you survive. That's how you win. That's how you become the hero of your own story instead of a victim in someone else's. And maybe, if you're lucky, you'll help someone else remember their own strength along the way. That's the real revolution. That's the real revenge. That's the real happy ending. I smiled at my reflection in the window, at the woman looking back at me, and I barely recognized her, but in the best way possible. She looked like someone who'd walked through fire and come out forged into something unbreakable. She looked like someone who knew her worth. She looked like someone who'd finally, after so many years of being told otherwise, learned to love herself. And that, I thought, was the best revenge of all. True strength isn't found in dominance or control, but in the courage to stand up after being knocked down. The greatest victory isn't destroying your enemies, but refusing to let them destroy you. And real power lies not in making others feel small, but in helping them remember how tall they can stand. Your worth was never determined by those who tried to diminish you, and your freedom begins the moment you stop believing their lies about who you are.